What's up, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of the Bronx and Big Blue Breakdown. I'm your host, Brady Heslin, and today I'll be breaking down John Harbaugh's first press conference as the head coach of the New York Giants, along with some Cody Bellinger news. And it sounds like we will be having a decision soon on Bellinger, so that is really nice. But let's get into the John Harbaugh news first. I think that's a little bit bigger. But so from last episode to this episode. John Harbaugh was not officially named the head coach at the time that I recorded the last episode. I recorded that, I believe it was on Wednesday, last Wednesday. I recorded that, but he was named it was official on Saturday. So that little window was a little bit scary. I'm not gonna lie. Everyone was telling us, he's the head coach. Like all the Jordan Rodon, Art Stapleton, those guys, they were saying he's head coach. Like Connor Hughes, even Ian O'Connor, I think had said like stuff like that. Like he's head coach. Then there's some other people, I think like Tom Pelissero and like some of the bigger guys are kind of like, they're working more like power, like trying to decide the power structure within the organization. And the other guys are saying it's just lawyer talk. It's just like, lawyers, getting their stuff, whatever. But it was a little bit worried. And then it came out, O'Connor posted something that said up until like late Saturday morning, John Harbaugh's agent remained in contact with the Titans. And Ian O'Connor texted John Harbaugh Friday night and asked if he would still be if he's still gonna be the next head coach of New York Giants. And John Harbaugh responded with the I don't know emoji. So yeah, a little scary there, but they got it done at the end of the day. And I think um, overall, the stuff that John Harbaugh was fighting for will be good for the organization. And one of those things is that John Harbaugh will be reporting directly to ownership. So in the past with the Giants, it's gone head coach, GM, owner. Now it's going to go GM, head coach, owner, which is how John Harbaugh did it in Baltimore. And I mean, this is clearly the best thing for the organization. I mean, when you have a GM who's won 7 games the last 2 seasons, and then you have a 18-year, experienced head coach that's won a Super Bowl with, 12 playoff appearances, 6 division titles, you're gonna, let that guy have more power. So, yeah, that time period was a bit scary, but um, just glad it got done. I'm glad it didn't, go all the way into like Monday because some reports are saying, oh, they don't want it to take away from the playoffs or whatever. And I was like, dude, if this goes almost a week, I'm not going to be able to handle it. But John Harbaugh's the head coach. So now we can talk a little bit about the press conference. So I don't think there's a ton to necessarily take away from it, mostly because, John Harbaugh's not a first time head coach. So he kind of just treated it like a normal press conference. It wasn't like he didn't really have to. He let the resume speak for itself. That's kind of what I was trying to get at there. But yeah, some of my favorite parts were one part was where he talked about you know he's been doing this for 18 years, a long time, whatever. But how you have to maintain principles, but how you get to those principles can change. So you might have like a goal, but getting to that goal 18 years ago is going to be different than getting to it now. So I think that was a really good answer. Obviously, practices have changed a lot. He mentioned that specifically, but he mentioned also like play calling, blitz packages, all that kind of stuff, even just weightlifting, how guys eat and recover. That stuff has changed a ton, with all the new technology in the past 18 years. So it's important to keep those principles, but how you get to those principles may change over time. So I like that. Also talked about how he wants guys that love football, and if you don't love football, you're not going to love it with the Giants, and Joe Shane's going to let you go play somewhere else. And I think this is going to be a wake up call for a lot of players, and I think some guys might become a little disgruntled with John Harbaugh, and he's going to really change the way things have gone. I mean, he's going to be a total opposite of Brian Dable with practices and that kind of thing. I think you can immediately point to a guy like Deontay Banks with his effort and that kind of thing. But I also think you need to look at like Abdul Carter and Malik Neighbors and even Dexter Lawrence. Some of those guys, they need to be held accountable to a higher standard as well. Just because they're some of the best players on the team doesn't mean that they are treated differently than other guys. They still got to be working just as hard. Um, and that kind of thing. I think Dexter Lawrence might have came into shape a little bit, came into camp a little out of shape. Malik Neighbors, it was reports have come out that he really wasn't trying in practices last year. He did have a lot of penalties last year, procedural penalties. And then obviously Abdul Carter, we know about him this year, late to meetings, getting suspended, that kind of thing. So I think it's good that, John Harbaugh is really going to create a culture. That term gets thrown on a lot in football, the word culture. And I'm not a big believer in culture wins. I don't think beating a team in week 18 for your fourth win and getting a win streak is really going to carry over into the next year. We're going to have a new head coach and a bunch of new players. That I feel like that kind of gets forgotten about. Or like, you're not going to be carrying over momentum from January to September. Like, I just don't really think that happens. Um, but creating a culture is something that John Harbaugh is actually like going to do because he's going to get guys that love football and they're going to be able to work together and they keep throwing out collaborative to be collaborative from players to coaches to ownership to front office and it's all going to be a collaborative effort and there really is going to be like a culture and you can just feel like that brotherhood effect that John Harbaugh is going to bring um, as the head coach and obviously he's a different style of head coach. He's not going to be calling plays. So he's like the CEO type of head coach. That's like his job. He's got to build this culture. He's got to get all 53 men on the same page with the coaching staff and with the front office so we can push to make the playoffs and eventually push for a Super Bowl championship. So, yeah, I mean, that press conference really got me fired up. I'm already ready for next season. I'm super excited to get some coordinators hired, position coaches, get in the offseason, see who we sign, draft, and start getting to OTAs and training camp and preseason. Next thing you know, we're to the regular season. But Joe Shane was like really nervous to start the press conference. I thought that was really odd because this is the happiest Giants fans have been. I mean, like the happiest Giants fans have been with Joe Shane probably since 2022. Like, honestly, I don't really. I mean, if he was that nervous at the bye week, okay, like that makes sense. I mean, this dude had to go out in front of media after this huge losing streak, and everyone wants him fired, and he has to try to defend himself. But like, he would just played a pivotal role in getting the top head coach on the market. I mean, I'm not a Joe Shane fan. Right? If you've been listening to this podcast for any bit of time, I'm not a Joe Shane fan. But I have to give credit where credit's due. He helped bring John Harbaugh to New York. But like he's up there and he's like, stumbling over words and whatever. And if I had to guess, he probably had like a script or like rehearsed something in his mind and maybe skipped over something or didn't say a word he wanted to say and it kind of like got him rattled because I do take a public speaking class at my school and I kind of learned that like if you memorize a script and you go off that script, you're just gonna get messed up. So that's probably what happened if I had to guess. But yeah, I'm trying to see anything else from the John Harbaugh point of thing. Everyone kind of tried to downplay the structure thing. Harbaugh downplayed it. Chris Mayer downplayed it, and we'll get to him in a second. But it's clear John Harbaugh is running the New York Giants. He is running the New York Giants, and they're not just going to come out and say that, obviously, but he's running the Giants. Obviously, there's still ownership, but this is John Harbaugh's show, and I'm putting my full trust in him to do the job. Obviously, there's going to be some growing pains, and that kind of thing, but I trust John Harbaugh, and he has the resume to show that. In past years, with Brian Dable and Joe Shane, and even Joe Judge, those guys, like, I try to put my faith in them because, like, fresh face. Um, it's kind of honestly, it's kind of tough to trust ownership at this point, getting the head coach right after the past couple of years. But you try to put your trust in them. If they make a questionable move, okay, just let them, kind of get their guys and whatever, and just see how it goes. But like John Harbaugh, I actually have a reason to trust him, and it's because of his, phenomenal resume. Um, so Chris Mara, I will talk about him a little bit. It seems like he is stepping up for his brother, John Mara, who is obviously dealing with cancer. I saw a picture from the press conference. It's really sad. It's really sad. I hope he keeps fighting and beats cancer. Um, but it looks like it will be Chris Mara who's kind of stepping up into the role. And a question that I have is, they said it, with John Mara's health not really being able to lead a GM search, but it looked like Chris Mara led a head coach search. So why couldn't Chris Mara have also led a GM search? But it's over. Joe Shane's staying. Got to just kind of deal with it. But whatever. Um, Sorry, something's popped up. But yeah, so Chris Mara had his like first press conference really ever, and he just flat out, said that John Harbaugh is like he's the most important guy. He said he like the most important cog in the wheel, I think was the quote that he had. But Chris Mara is the guy right now, it seems, with ownership, and he just flat out said that John Harbaugh is basically running the show. Um, he also said I'm just helping him any way I can when talking about John Mara. He he mentioned something about um, keeping Joe Shane just because of his knowledge of the NFL. I don't know. I mean, John Harbaugh, said he was really impressed with Joe Shane and this stuff, but I don't know. Maybe Joe Shane just knows how to speak well, not public. Like I don't know. Maybe he interviews well. Like I don't know because the results don't back up the talk that people have with Joe Shane. But I feel like I keep talking about Joe Shane, and that's not the point of this. But all in all, just I'm excited. This is a new feeling for the Giants, and that's another thing I kind of feel like gets thrown around. The was it Connor Hughes one that said Brian Dable grabbed Jackson Dart's neck and said this is the start of something new or whatever, like a new feeling. And then, Joe Judge comes in, wins 6 games, almost gets to the playoffs. We got this new vibe, this new feeling. Daniel Jones and Pat Shurmur, a new feeling. But this is new. Giants bringing in a head coach with legit experience, Super Bowl winning head coach, and they're just giving him the reins. He can basically do whatever he wants. He can pay his assistants whatever he wants. He got paid whatever he wants. He's going to have, say in personnel decisions and, stuff from analytics to, basically everything, just overhauling the entire organization. This is John Harbaugh's organization, and we're just going to have to, be along for the ride and, see how it goes. And, in my opinion, my expectation for this team is they need to be competing day one next year. And I know that's John Harbaugh's, expectation as well, but just based off what ownership has said, what Joe Shane has said, Joe Shane has no excuses anymore. This team needs to compete. The season can't be over by Halloween like what it is every year. I want the Giants playing meaningful football in December, even if it's just they're in the hunt, they're around 500. Just stay in the fight, be competitive, and show some signs of improvement and push for a playoff spot. And that's kind of my thoughts there about John Harbaugh. So we now can transition to the Yankees and another week of, not much. But I think we're on the brink of Cody Bellinger news. I think we are because, earlier this morning, the Mets traded for Luis Robert, and the Mets are the only team that has been like linked by name to Cody Bellinger. And, this might not take them out completely, but I think this, certainly has to help the Yankees' chances to bring back Cody Bellinger. And I'm honestly just kind of getting sick of this. Like, just re-sign Bellinger. Come on, just re-sign, come back, and then we can kind of continue moving on with the offseason. But one thing that I did want to do, and I'm going to pull it up, I just want to read off the Yankees team as of right now and just kind of give you guys kind of a thought of where they're at because they really haven't done a lot, and I feel like they're kind of just running it back, which I don't think it's a terrible idea to run back the lineup. I mean, they scored a lot of runs and hit a lot of home runs. They just didn't show up in the playoffs. So, I mean, you can run back with this lineup and hope that they can, turn it around in the playoffs next year. But it's more the bullpen that I'm kind of worried about because, we knew that that was a weakness of the Yankees and they tried to really attack it at the deadline. But they lost Devin Williams, they lost Luke Weaver, and they haven't really brought anyone in to replace those guys. So I feel like we're just going to be at the deadline again next year with the same problem of the bullpen. So I don't understand why you're not trying to fill that now instead of waiting until the deadline. But let me pull up the Yankees projections. Yep. All right. So this is as of right now. So no Cody Bellinger, obviously. It's Fangraphs has Grisham, Judge, Rice, Stanton, Chisholm, Dominguez, McMahon, Caballero, Wells. They have Escara, DeYoung, um, Cabrera, and Rosario on the bench. So Volpe um, had the shoulder injury, so they're projecting him not to be ready for opening day, and I think that's correct. And then the pitching staff, you've got Fried, Schlittler, Warren, Weathers, Heel. Obviously, Cole, Rodon, and Schmidt will not be ready for opening day. And then the bullpen, this is what I don't love. You've got David Bednar, Camilo Doval, Fernando Cruz, Tim Hill, Paul Blackburn, Caleb Ort, Cade Winquest, and Ryan Yarbrough. Like, I mean, Bednar can't throw every day. Doval and Cruz can't throw every day. I mean, Tim Hill basically can. I mean, that dude's got a rubber arm. I feel like he threw every game last year. But you got two lefties, one of which is Yarbrough, who's a long reliever. And I don't know, like this just doesn't look good to me. I mean, you only have one guy under 28 years old. I mean, it's an older bullpen. Like I don't know. I don't love it honestly. Doval goes through some. He's shaky a little bit. Fernando Cruz is also a little bit shaky. And I'd like for them to bring in 1 to 2 more arms. To really improve. This. I mean, maybe Caleb Ort and Winquest turn into some studs with Matt Blake, but I don't know if you can really rely on that. And even if it's through a trade, just get a reliable guy. He'll give you, a 3 ERA, even like a 3.5 ERA. Give you 50, 60 innings, whatever. Like just a reliable guy. Even just like 1 or 2 of those, would be helpful. I mean, here's the ERAs, for the guys from last year in their bullpen. So you got Bednar 2.3, Doval 3.58, Cruz 3.56, Hale 3.09, or 6.23, or no, excuse me, Blackburn 6.23, or is 4.89. Winquest didn't pitch last year in the majors. He's a Rule 5 pick, so he's never pitched in the majors. And then you got Yarbrough, who's 4.36. I mean, that's not very good. Like, I feel like people are really downplaying this, and we're gonna get to the season, and they'll be throwing out Caleb Ort in the 8th inning, and we're like, whoa, what's going on here? Like, I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they get a couple guys back and they could throw. Maybe they want to try Heel in the bullpen. Maybe they want to try Warren in the bull. I don't know, but I don't know. I just don't love the state of this team right now to win a World Series. I think this is a playoff team, but I don't even know if I see them getting the championship series, with this current roster construction. I don't think the lineup's bad, especially if you had Bellinger. You had Bellinger, get him in for Dominguez. Even maybe days against lefties, you could try Rice catching. You put Bellinger at first, and you can get Dominguez in the lineup, to help get him in there. But I don't know. I don't think this team is what's going to get you over the hump. I don't think so. I think they got to add some bullpen. I think a righty catcher to compete with Wells would help. I think a righty first baseman would help. I think, I do like Rosario and McMahon split or platoon. Um, they can kind of split the reps there. So yeah, I mean that's kind of where I'm at on the Yankees. Hopefully, we get some Bellinger news soon, and maybe they can make a couple other small moves and even trades, and go from there with the season. So yeah, we can now move on to the this week in history. It's gonna be a little bit of a shorter episode this week. Not like a ton to talk about, just kind of waiting on Bellinger and then waiting on some coordinator stuff. But so my first one is with the Giants on January 20th, 1991. Matt Barr kicked 5 field goals, the last one from 42 yards as time expired, as the Giants defeated the 49ers in the NFC Championship game 15-13. So low scoring game, but the Giants get the win and advance to the Super Bowl. And for the Yankees, on January 16th, 2004, the Yankees acquired Alex Rodriguez from the Texas Rangers, creating one of the most star-studded infields in MLB history. So a pretty big week for both the Giants and the Yankees in history. There's multiple other ones I saw about. The Yankees signed Masahiro Tanaka this week, and the Giants also had other Super Bowl bids clinched during this week. So now looking forward, just kind of monitoring the coordinator and position coaches. It looks like Carmen Bursillo is going to stay. That's some of the things I've seen. Apparently, Jack Harbaugh, the father of John Harbaugh, is advocated for Bursillo. Ownership's advocated for Bursillo. We'll see about Todd Monken, see if he gets the Browns head coaching job. If he doesn't, it looks like he's likely to come be the offensive coordinator, which I really like. I'll give more of a breakdown if that becomes official. Also, as they start requesting to interview candidates, maybe next week, if they haven't hired anyone yet, I'll do a, like how I did the head coaching candidates breakdown, I'll do one for coordinators. But it looks like the Giants will be requesting to interview a bunch of Ravens guys, but the Ravens did block their special teams coordinator, so we'll have to see about that. Yeah, just kind of monitoring that situation. And then Cody Bellinger, I mean, I feel like we should hear something any day. I mean, we've been saying like any week for months now. Should be any day. I mean, I think I feel very confident he's going to be back after that Luis Robert trade, and I think it's the right fit for both sides. And I think we'll hear something sooner rather than later, but who knows? I could be very wrong about that. So, one last thing I want to say before I end this episode is I will officially be changing the episode schedule. So I apologize. From the start of this podcast, I've been saying, Mondays, ideally at least on YouTube at 6 o'clock. But I am going to be changing that. My Mondays are a bit busy and getting busier. So I don't want to, my goal is to get episodes out on Tuesdays. That'll be my goal, but that may not always happen like today. But I also was kind of waiting for the press conference and that kind of thing. But so my goal is to get them on Tuesdays, but it may be Wednesdays. Still 6 o'clock on YouTube. Might be a couple minutes after on Spotify and Apple, but yeah. So that is the new upload schedule. As the offseason gets deeper with the Giants, and as the Yankee season progresses, I may try and get some guests on. But yeah, so that'll conclude this episode. Please like, follow, subscribe wherever you're watching or listening. And until next time, let's go Yankees and let's go Giants.